Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, an unfortunate event took place in the separation line, more specifically in the demilitarized zone in the Syrian occupied Golan, took place where an irresponsible armed group took action against the peacekeepers deployed in the Golan and held them hostages. At the beginning of this unfortunate act, the armed terrorist group claimed responsibility publicly in a YouTube, and they described their hostages as war prisoners. The Syrian government was involved immediately in consultations with the UNDOF commands on the spot over there, as well as in here, through myself and the Undersecretary for Peacekeeping Operations, in order to liberate these peacekeepers from their abductors and release them and bring them back safely to their headquarters. We have been in close consultations with the United Nations, both in here and in Damascus, and the Syrian government is committed to rescue these peacekeepers, to put an end to these irresponsible acts by the armed groups and the terrorist armed groups operating in this very sensitive area where the UNDOF forces are deployed. This terrorist act took place for the first time since 1974. So any one of us should ask himself or herself the question, why did it happen now? Why did it take place now? And why UNDOF is targeted by the terrorist armed groups? You may hear many versions, but the most important part of the story is the following. Number one, the Syrian government has warned the United Nations, represented by the Secretariat, as well as by the DPKO, for months against terrorist activities of the armed terrorist groups in the demilitarized zone facilitated by Israel. The proofs are the following. The Israelis rescued almost a month and a half ago a Jordanian citizen Salafist belonging to the Salafist groups in Jordan who crossed the demilitarized zone and went into the occupied part of the Syrian Golan under Israeli control. He was treated, hospitalized by the Israelis, and then returned safely to Jordan through the demilitarized zone and the separation line. Then, 2 weeks ago, 7 terrorists from the same armed groups who took the Filipino contingent staffers hostages were also rescued by the Israelis through the separation line, treated in the Israeli hospitals, and returned at an undisclosed place on the line of separation, according to the Israeli official statement. So that proves in itself that the Israelis are cooperating with these armed groups and terrorist groups and facilitating their movements and their crossing of the separation line, illegally of course, in a flagrant and blatant breach of the Disengagement Forces Agreement of 1974. Number two, the terrorist armed group, as you know, claimed responsibility, and they showed themselves in a YouTube where they described these innocent peacekeepers as war hostages. Dramatically speaking, amazingly speaking, you name it, these war prisoners, according to what these armed groups said, became suddenly protected by the armed groups from the Syrian government's fire. So they moved their statement from considering these innocent staffers of the UNDOF from the Filipino contingent as war prisoners to, no, they are not war prisoners in our hands anymore. We took them, we captured them to protect them. Of course, they did that under the pressure of the capitals which are sponsoring these terrorist groups in Syria and instructing them how to act and what to say. All these details are very well known to the Secretariat, very well known to the United Nations, very well known to the Security Council. I myself, on behalf of my government, forwarded to the Security Council, the Secretary General and his Undersecretary for Peacekeeping Operations, dozens of letters recently about what I'm talking about. Namely speaking, the Israeli violation of the Disengagement Forces Agreement and the jeopardization of the UNDOF staffers in the Golan. So now, number one, the Israeli authorities assume the full responsibility of the deterioration of the situation in the demilitarized zone in the Golan, and the Israelis are responsible for any danger or threats that might occur to the UNDOF staffers in the Golan. Number four, the Israelis, by doing so, would have in their mind the idea of repeating the same mistake they did in South Lebanon after the occupation of South Lebanon at the end of the 70s, 1978, where they created what they called a zone tampon, a safe zone, run by a proxy militia headed by a Lebanese officer at that time. And as you remember, this area stayed in South Lebanon for almost 20 years until the full liberation by the Lebanese resistance of this area in 2000. So one of the goals of the Israelis and their proxies would be an imitation of what they did in South Lebanon, but to do so, they need to get rid of the UNDOF from the area. This is why these armed terrorist groups have targeted UNDOF contingents. They started with, before that, with other contingents, and this is why the President of Croatia decided to withdraw, as you know, the Croatian contingent from the UNDOF. The Japanese are thinking about it also, to withdraw their contingent, and now the Filipinos. So somebody is targeting on purpose, these peacekeepers, United Nations peacekeepers deployed on the Golan in order to create a proper ground for the Israelis and their proxies to repeat what they did in Lebanon. But that will not fly because Syria, the Syrian government, will not tolerate that and will not allow that. And the international community, represented here by the Security Council, will not also tolerate the Israelis and their proxies and some Arab capitals, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then Turkey also, to play this very dangerous game.
السلطات أو القوات المسلحة السورية مسؤولية أمن المدن أو القرى التي تتعرض للقصف حاليا في حال انسحبت أندف من هناك وانسحب أيضا المسلحون الذين يستخدمون كما فهمت منك كدروع بشرية. فهل هذا صحيح؟ هل هناك خطر على السكان في المنطقة من القوات الحكومية السورية؟
السيد وكيل الأمين العام لشؤون عمليات حفظ السلام يعرف جيدا، لأنني أنا نقلت له هذا الكلام عدة مرات، يعلم ويعرف جيدا أن القوات السورية لا تستهدف المدنيين في تلك المنطقة. في تلك المنطقة يوجد مجموعة من القرى السورية المأهولة بالسكان والمتواجدة في منطقة الفصل ومنها قرية الجملة. المجموعات الإرهابية المسلحة اعتادت مؤخرا على أن تأخذ السكان المدنيين في تلك القرى كدروع بشرية كي يمتنع الجيش السوري عن استهدافهم كمسلحين. القصد من هذا الموضوع طبعا توتير الأجواء وإظهار الجانب السوري بمظهر غير القادر على حماية تلك القرى، وهم كلهم سوريون بطبيعة الحال، وكذلك غير القادر على احترام تعهداته بموجب اتفاق فصل القوات لعام 1974.
هل تخشون من إقامة منطقة حزام أمني عازل في المنطقة هناك؟
نحن لا نخشى شيء من هذا القبيل، ولكن قد يكون في مخيلة الإسرائيليين ومن يتعامل معهم وينفذ أجنداتهم سواء في بعض العواصم العربية أو العواصم الإقليمية، قد يكون في ذهنهم أحد السيناريوهات إفراغ منطقة الجولان من قوات الأندف وتكرار ما فعلته إسرائيل في جنوب لبنان في السبعينيات إلى حين تحرير كامل الجنوب من رجس الاحتلال الإسرائيلي في العام 2000. قد يكون هذا السيناريو وارد في أذهان البعض، لكن الحكومة السورية لا تخشى هذا الكلام، لأن اتفاق فصل القوات هو بضمانة مجلس الأمن، وبالتالي قرار إبقاء أو إنهاء تواجد قوات الأندف في الجولان هو قرار يتعلق بالطرفين الرئيسيين في النزاع وبمجلس الأمن. فهذه المسألة ليست وجهة نظرنا نحن، وإنما قد تكون سيناريو في ذهن الإسرائيليين. على كل حال نحن نقلنا إلى عناية وكيل الأمين العام والأمين العام نفسه عدة مرات بالبراهين والقرائن كيف أن قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلية تساعد المجموعات المسلحة الإرهابية على تنقلها عبر منطقة الفصل من وإلى شطري الجولان، الجزء الخاضع للسيطرة السورية والجزء المحتل من قبل إسرائيل. هناك لدينا قدمنا دلائل وبراهين، وهناك بيانات رسمية لتلك الجماعات المسلحة والجماعات الإرهابية المسلحة. بالمناسبة تلك الجماعة الإرهابية المسلحة التي أخذت أفراد الكتيبة الفلبينية رهائن أو أسرى أعلنت بشكل لا لبس فيه عبر يوتيوب كما تعرف مسؤوليتها وقدمت نفسها، وبالتالي تشير هذه المجموعة إلى نفسها على أنها هي المسؤولة عن العمل الإرهابي الذي قامت به. وكما قلت هذا يحدث لأول مرة منذ عام 1974. والسؤال المهم هو أن نطرح على أنفسنا السؤال التالي، هو لماذا الآن ولماذا في تلك المنطقة، وماذا تريد تلك المجموعات الإرهابية المسلحة من عملها في تلك المنطقة؟ كل هذه الأسئلة أجبت عليها عندما تحدثت باللغة الإنجليزية. Please.
We just had a statement from the The UN says that its peacekeepers are being held in a village that is coming under heavy shelling by your government forces. Now you know the peacekeepers are in that village.
Yeah.
Are you going to stop the shelling?
The Syrian government forces are not shelling the village, number one. No, I told him this yesterday. I told him this. I was in his office yesterday. And I told him this. The Syrian government is not shelling the village. If you double check and triple check, you would see that the shelling is targeting the suburbs of the villages, where the armed groups are concentrated.
But the armed groups are holding these peacekeepers, so
Yeah.
that's maybe also where the peacekeepers are.
No. We know for sure what we are doing, and we know where the peacekeepers are, and we know what we are doing. The Syrian government commitment and task and the duties is to rescue the peacekeepers, to safeguard their lives, to bring them safe back to their headquarters. All this is an integral part of our mission. And this is why we are even sacrificing the lives of our own soldiers in order to bring these peacekeepers back safe to their headquarters. We are paying a huge price for their safety. The Syrian government forces is not targeting the villages. The inhabitants of these villages are Syrians, citizens, like anybody else, and they are part of our sovereignty, and they are part of our government's duty to protect them by all means. The Syrian government forces are doing exactly what they have to do in order to, number one, bring back safely the peacekeepers, guarantee the safety and security of the inhabitants of these villages. 3, get these armed groups, terrorists, out of the area. Yes.
I wanted to ask about a letter that Syria turned in earlier in the week to the Security Council and the Secretary General, apparently about the ship that came from Libya and statements in the Turkish Parliament. Could you say what the letter is and what the response has been so far?
I addressed 2 letters, actually, in the same day, yesterday, to the Security Council members as well as to the Secretary General. The 2 letters, the first one is about the acceleration and escalation by the Turkish government's infiltration and intervention in our domestic affairs by supplying weapons to the terrorist groups through the border in a blatant violation of international law principles, as well as of the neighborhood conventions regulating the bilateral relations between the 2 countries. The Turkish government is facilitating all tasks of acts aiming to destabilize the country, I mean Syria. The Turkish government is encouraging stealing the Syrian plants in Aleppo. 1,500 industrial plants were stolen so far from Aleppo and shipped into Turkey. The Turkish government, as you know, is facilitating the delivery of weapons to these armed groups coming from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from Libya, and from elsewhere. Now it has become public that the American administration is promising $60 million also of so-called non-lethal assistance. Britain did the same. So here we have a clear-cut picture of what's going on. We drew the attention of the Security Council to assume its responsibility in preventing the escalation in the area and in making the necessary pressure on the Turkish government to return the stolen, precious stuff taken away from the city of Aleppo. And to, of course, also exert the necessary pressure so that the Turkish government would stop its help and assistance to the terrorists and armed groups operating in the northern part of Syria. The second letter was about the attack and the demolition of the Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo and the destruction of the very important masterpieces of old books and archives contained in the library and next to the mosque. 750,000 rare books were stolen from this library and shipped to Turkey. Part of the library was burned, part of these books is lost forever, unfortunately. The other part is shipped also into Turkey. These armed groups, as you know, recently perpetrated an appalling act when they cut the head of Al-Ma'arri's statue in Aleppo. And Al-Ma'arri, by the way, is the great Islamic philosopher ever in the history of the Islamic civilization. Al-Ma'arri was a secular philosopher in the 10th century, gentlemen. So these terrorist groups, claiming that they act on behalf of their Islamic ideology and Islam has nothing to do with them, found very suitable to cut the head of this, the statue of this very important philosopher, in order to show to terrorize the inhabitants of the area and to show that they don't believe in any secular thoughts, even though this gentleman lived in Ma'arrat al-Nu'man 10 centuries ago. By the way, just for your kind information, that gentleman wrote a very famous book entitled Rasail al-Ghufran, which means the pardon letters. He was blind, by the way. 600 years later, this book was adopted by Dante in Italy when he wrote his Divine Comedy. So we are talking about a real philosopher and a real gentleman. The armed terrorist groups wouldn't pardon this man even 10 centuries after his death. So they went straight ahead to his grave and cut the head of his statue. The same guys would like to destroy the pyramids in Egypt. The same guys and the same school of thoughts shot this innocent girl from Pakistan, Malala Yousaf. The same guys destroyed the statues in Bamiyan in Afghanistan. The same guys perpetrated 9/11, etc., etc., etc. So here we are facing the same kind of challenge, represented by ignorance speaking, daring speaking on behalf of Islam.
Can you confirm that UN vehicles have entered the town to rescue the UN peacekeepers but have had to pull out because of shelling?
I have no information. Thank you very much.